So I can't believe we're doing this again. I really can't. I'm not the kind of person who wants to be beating a dead horse. But this time, it's Fender's own damn fault that we have to continue talking about this. So this video will probably be a little bit shorter. There's not as much to cover as there has been in the past. Update, I did return the standard Strat, as I told you that I would. It's gone. I no longer own it. It's totally gone. I actually used the money to buy a 73 Bassman 10 amp, and it's amazing. One of the best amps I've ever owned. But anyway, we need to talk about this new shit from Fender. So it turns out that so many people hated this idea and so many people panned this guitar that Fender had to go on this like PR tour and like do all these interviews and stuff to try to convince us that we're wrong and that we're stupid. I'm going to prove it to you. So here we go. We got a couple of articles on the screen. Here's the first one. So this is the assistant vice president of sales, I believe. This is Justin Norvell. So Fender's Justin Norvell on the $599 standard series and why it's not a Squier with a different decal. So right away, the headline is a counter to the kind of stuff that we've been talking about on this channel and other people have been talking about in the comments of videos. And then a few other videos on YouTube that I've seen with a similar sentiment to my own. So now they've got to answer, right? They got to answer. This is good news. This means they are listening and paying attention. Let's scroll down through this article. Basically, he talks about it's this big PR bullshit about how we got this great relationship with Cortec and Cortec made the Squier 51 and so let's talk about something that we did a long time ago. And use that as the example for how good the factory is. Not the fact that they make guitars today. No, they're talking about the guitars that they made years and years ago that people actually liked. The Squier 51, which was a good guitar. I'm not going to knock it. But let's scroll down here. He talks about all the specs of the new standard. But here we go. There's a couple parts of this article that jumped out at me that made me realize we needed to make this video today. So, they ask, what is the elevator pitch for the standard series? And he says, it's not about a price point or filling a hole in a business term. It's about, I'm a kid guitar player or someone that wants a second guitar. And I don't want to buy super high end, but I want a rock solid, reliable name brand guitar. And we didn't have that. Our company statement is serving all players at all stages. And we are kind of falling down on that in some respects. I've already watched some of the punditry post-launch where it's like, oh, it's a Squier with a Fender decal on it. So he admits he's probably watched my videos. He's probably watched other people's videos. A few other much bigger channels than my own have made videos about this, and they softballed their criticisms of the guitar, but their conclusion was pretty much the same as mine, and that is that these guitars are pieces of shit that don't deserve the Fender name. So this is not a normal interview. This is not a normal news story. This is Fender begging the outlets to publish the story so they can defend themselves, because Fender doesn't really have a way to put out a press release. Could you imagine if they did that? Fender puts out a press release and says, we have heard the concerns and we want to address them, because then that's admitting that there's a problem, and they don't want to do that. So they think that we're really, really, really stupid. They think that we're not going to notice that this article, the article we're going to talk about next, and some of the other articles that have happened are that. They're literally press releases from Fender telling us that we're all wrong. But check this out. So he says that the reason that they did this is, I'm a kid guitar player or someone that wants a second guitar, and I don't want super high end. I want a rock solid, reliable name brand guitar. There's a lot of problems if those are the only reasons that this guitar exists, okay? Because let's start with the first thing. I don't want to buy super high end. That's fair. Most of the market is not super high end. Seriously. Most of the market is not super high end. Look at any brand, and their best-selling model is probably the lower-tiered model. I would guess that even a brand like Gibson, I bet their Les Paul Studio might be their best-selling guitar. I'm not counting Epiphone. You look at any brand. So saying that they don't want to buy super high-end, that's irrelevant, okay? he's also throwing his own brand into the shitter, because he's saying that these $900 or $700, $800 Mexican guitars aren't super high end, even though they cost almost $1,000. Why are you charging almost $1,000 if they're not super high end? Okay, that's number one. Number two, a rock solid, reliable name brand guitar. And he says, and we didn't have that. Well, guess what, Fender? You still don't have that, because the new Standard Series is neither rock solid nor reliable. We're not going to go over all the details again, but the fretwork is terrible. The pickups sound bad. The back of the neck feels like shit. It won't stay in tune. And on my unit, the trem block was not installed correctly. So you've at least got a QC problem there. And the nut was cut terribly. So it's not rock solid and it's not reliable. What it is actually is an unsteady, shitty name brand guitar. Is that really what you want your brand to be all about? Is it? Let's continue. The statement is serving all players at all stages. At which stage are these people being served by this guitar? At the I'm about to give up stage? At the I got more money than sense stage? At the I like sucking off Fender stage? What stage are we talking about that we're serving with this guitar? We watched some of the punditry post-launch where it's like, oh, it's a Squier with a Fender decal on it. Okay? By the way, whoever wrote this article is an idiot, because they're showing this is a roasted maple. So this one right here is correct. Okay? That's the Standard Series. This, why does it look like it's roasted maple? This is not the Standard Series. It's not. Look at it. This is not it. This is not the guitar they're selling. I don't know where they got this picture from. What is this? What is this? This is not that guitar. They didn't even link the right shit. So they can't even find a reputable news site or outlet. Who wrote this article? Music Radar. They're a legit publication, right? They can't even find a competent journalist to cover up their press release, because that's what this really is. Let's move on. Okay, so the reply guys online, that would be you guys and me, are saying things like, this is just an Affinity Series Squier guitar with Fender on the headstock. How do you rebut that? Okay? Don't tell me that Fender didn't write these questions themselves, by the way, because they totally did. There are people that proudly play Squier over Fender. Squier on its own is one of the biggest electric guitar brands, so it would be crazy to get rid of that. What? No. Hit the brakes and back up for a minute. If you play Squier because you can't get a Fender, for whatever reason, geographic, financial, that's fine. But there is not a soul in this universe that would proudly play Squier over Fender. Not a one. Not a one. And if you're about to come in the comments and say that you are, then something's wrong with your brain. You need to go get it checked. No one proudly plays Squier over Fender. No one. That is a huge cope, and it's an insult to all of us. We demand better quality and better representation in this market from a brand like Fender. But let's move on. So to answer the question, how do you rebut that the new guitar, Standard, isn't just an Affinity with Fender on the headstock? And this was his answer. It was designed from the bottom up. Those guitars are value engineered. I would say an Affinity Series, you are managing costs the whole time, and you're just like, how do I get this into the right spot while still being as good an instrument, playing as well as it can? Affinity Series guitars are awesome. I don't see how the design of the Standard so far, from reading that, is any different, except they fucked up and failed. That they would say, managing costs the whole time, okay, got to stay under $599. How do I get this in the right spot while still being as good of an instrument, playing as well as it can? Isn't that the MO of literally any guitar that's ever been designed, like ever, that's being sold to the public? Make it as good as it can be, Why would you even say that? If you have to say that, that means that there's other guitars where you're like, we're not really going to pay attention to how good it plays. It doesn't matter. No, that's bad. That's a bad look, Fender. All right, what about the Standard Series? The Standard Series guitar was designed with the price thing removed. What? Basically, so it was just like, what's the best guitar we can make with this partner in this facility that would be worthy of the Fender name? This is an even bigger piece of shit than the guitar itself. Do not look the public and your customer in the eye and say that you honestly went to Cortec and said, no price limit, make the very best Fender Strat you can make. And this is what you came up with. There is no way that is true. Absolutely no way that is true. For multiple reasons. There are $1,000 Jacksons that are made in China, for example. That's a different argument for a different day. But don't you tell me that $599, which means that it costs Fender less than that, is the best guitar you can make at this facility. So either this facility is awful at making guitars, which we know isn't true, because they have been known to make some pretty good stuff in the past and presently for other brands, and that really there was no price limit. You literally just said that you wanted to make a guitar that was name brand that people could afford. Then in the next paragraph, you're saying, we told them price was no limit. Well, which is it? Move on. The guardrails that almost keep something Squier were off. But we were still conscious of what was above it and what was below it and what would make sense. So really was a clean slate. And it was like, can we do this? Geography is a fascinating thing, that it's controversial. If this guitar had come out of one of our other facilities saying Fender, no one would be having this conversation. That's it. That's the end of the answer. And this answer enrages me more than anything that has happened in this entire saga. Anything that has happened in this entire saga. They asked him, point blank, tell us why this isn't just a Squier with Fender on the headstock. His answer was, we told them to make the best guitar they could with no price limit. And then he gave the most ridiculous non-answer. It doesn't make any sense to me. And if you claim that it makes sense to you, you must be an alien or something. And they're also aliens, and you both speak some other language that none of the rest of us normal people can understand. Let's read that one more time, and let's try to understand it as we go, okay? The guardrails that almost keep something Squier were off. So what are those guardrails? Are we talking about like pots and switches and pickups? Literally, very specifically, I will name to you the things that are different between an Affinity and this guitar. Okay? The pots and the headstock decal and the trem block. So the guardrails that keep something Squier are the trem block, the pots, and the headstock decal? Are you kidding me? Is that worth $400? Are you kidding me? Let's move on. Maybe there's a redeeming statement here. But we were still conscious of what was above it. So that would be the Mexican guitars. And what was below it, which is the Affinity guitars. And what would make sense. So it was a clean slate, and it was like, can we do this? I have zero understanding of what that retardation is right there. Zero. I have no clue what that means. I'm literally speechless. I can't believe they would say this and think this is acceptable. This makes the whole situation worse. It would have been better if Fender doubled down and said, this is the best guitar that we have ever made outside of Mexico and the United States, and left it at that. They would have been very wrong, but there would have been less to pick apart. Saying this kind of stuff is so insulting to all of us. It really is. And then that last sentence is so categorically incorrect that it just makes me squirm inside. If this guitar had come out of one of our other facilities saying Fender, no one would be having this conversation. A couple things on that. First of all, totally wrong. Absolutely wrong. Lots of people pile on Gibson and like to get on Gibson's ass because of the perceived quality control issues of new Gibson Les Paul standards. Um, those are made in America. I don't understand what the whole what difference does it make? Epiphones, some would tell you, are made better than Gibsons, and those are imported. So this argument that he's having here, that they're basically only criticizing it because it's being made in Indonesia, is completely wrong. I have about 5,000 reasons why I hate these guitars, and the fact it was made in Indonesia is actually at the bottom. Is it a complaint? Yes, but it's much lower than any of the actual empirical, provable, physical defects that these guitars have. So 100% wrong. So in essence, if we want to condense this answer for why Fender themselves say this is not just an affinity, their answer is, we told them to design a guitar with no price limit. We took these guardrails off, and you shouldn't even ask me that question because you're being racist, because this was made in Asia, and that's the only reason you're saying it is because it's made in Asia. That's their answer. That's their defense. Does that sound like a solid defense to you? If this were a court case, if this were a debate, if this were on television, if this were two people arguing in public, who's right here? Fender wouldn't win that argument in any arena, at any level. 5th grade debate class, up to whatever the highest level of this is. And if they really think this is going to work, that shows that I was right. They really, really think that we are so unbelievably stupid. Let's move down, because there was another nugget here, another shit nugget in this article. Did you ever think about retiring the Squier brand and making Fender models from beginner to custom shop? I think everything is a discussion. We're open enough as a company, and we listen enough to think about it. But there's so much equity in the Squier brand name. There are people that love Squier. There are people that proudly play Squier over Fender. Squier on its own is one of the biggest electric guitar brands, so it would be crazy to get rid of that. If this is someone's first Fender guitar, we are trying to line it up with, what do you think this person might play? So, this is exhausting, really. This is really, really exhausting. There is equity in the Squier brand. No, just be quiet. Just stop. Just stop. The truth of the matter is, the Bullet Squiers are not good enough to be called Fenders. And that's okay. I had a Bullet Strat. I really liked it. I have a Bullet Mustang. I really like it for what it is. It is a bare bones entry-level guitar that you don't have to feel bad about hacking up if you're going to mod it or something. I like that. They know they can't put Fender on there, because if they do, it destroys the heritage of the brand. You see where I'm going with this? What he's saying is, we have a delineation. We have a quality standard for the Fender brand name. The fact that they have a quality standard for the Fender brand name blows my mind, because their standard is so low. The fact that he would admit Squier must exist, basically, because we have to have lower quality instruments to be competitive in the market. And we don't really want to put Fender on those instruments. That's totally fair, and I don't blame Fender for that. I have no problem with. That makes sense to me. You got to have entry-level stuff, you know? You want to buy an 8-year-old a guitar, right? I wouldn't tell you to go buy him a Mexican Fender, probably. I'd say get him a good Squier. You know, go find a Squier that's used somewhere and try it out. And if it feels good, it doesn't have sharp fret edges or something, let him start with that. So he's admitting that there is a standard. But the fact that he thinks that the Fender Standard Series is above that level, it means that these guys have never played their own damn products. It's so obviously not in the same league as anything else with Fender on the headstock. It's not even close. So let's move on in this article here. When you say the Standard Series is designed from the bottom up, does that mean that, say, these pickups are an all-new design? What can you tell us about them? Oh, I can't wait to read this. Because Squier starts to bend more vintage at the top of its line. We wanted to go with something that's a little more modern, more over-round, distortion-friendly, more aggressive. We've recently gone back to a more vintage Alnico thing on the Player series, so we thought this was one of the ways this could stick out. No, 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 no. Ceramic bar magnet single coils are much cheaper to produce than Alnico. So cut the bullshit. That's not true. This is an angle that you're spinning. Installing a 2-point trem system instead of a 6-screw trem is cheaper to produce because it's fewer parts and it requires fewer motions in the machine or in the person making the guitar. End of story. 100% this is about the cheapest possible way to make these guitars. So don't spin this bullshit yarn into this fabric of it's modern, man. High distortion. No, it's just a fact. You can overdrive a ceramic pickup generally a lot easier than you can Alnico. That's just a product of it being ceramic. Don't say that you did this for that reason. That's a product of you choosing a cheap pickup. Anyway. So if this is someone's first Fender guitar, we are trying to line it up with what do we think that person might play or might want to hear. And a ceramic is a really even, diverse kind of pickup to start with. It's a nice bass line, and then you can trade up and out as you develop your taste for what Alnico pickups bring. Roundness, scoop, and those things that people start looking for. So he admits again, here we go again. These pickups are shit. They are bad. The pickups are bad. He says it right here. It's a nice bass line, and you can trade up and out. In other words, it comes with something that's bad. You can trade it up and upgrade it for something that's good. And then he names the wonderful things about Alnico. Alnico exists in the classic vibe Squier that's a better guitar and is cheaper than this one. What kind of crack is he smoking? You mentioned trading up. The standard series model looked like they would be good for modding. Yeah, it very much can be a base platform for someone to do what Fenders were built to do. Fenders are wide open. Everyone wants to be unique and personalize things, and this is a perfect personalization platform. For people who have a bunch of guitars and they want a guitar just to get into modding, this is a great step into that realm. There's nothing too precious about it, except that it's $599 fucking dollars. Everything he's talking about here can be done with a bullet Strat. Because it doesn't matter how bad the pickups are if they're meant to be replaced. So get the worst. It doesn't matter how bad the pots and switches are if they're the worst. You're going to replace them? Get the worst. The bridge, if you're going to replace it, get the worst. The trem block, if you're going to replace it, get the worst. The tuners, get the worst. So, following his logic, just get the cheapest guitar they make. Get the debut. It's like $119. Replace every single thing on it, and you're still probably cheaper than a classic vibe. Except it says Squier on the headstock. Oh, however will you cope with yourself? Let's continue. Sure, and the players who might buy one can mod it as their own playing style evolves. We have always welcomed that, and I think it's going to be a great platform. The way people can play jazz, funk, country, punk, metal, anything on a Strat or Telly, it's amazing. James Burton to James Root on Tellys. So, we really don't need to go through any more of this. I'm just skimming through to make sure there isn't anything. Yeah, that's pretty much all that matters in this article. So, everything else is about like offsets and other stuff. So, in essence, Fender's answer to this is the name on the headstock. We took the Squier guardrails off, and you're just going to mod it anyway, so who gives a shit how bad it is? The pickups are baseline. You're going to upgrade those anyway. Who cares? I can't believe that this got worse. I really can't. I didn't want to make any more videos about this. I really didn't. We talked about Marshall last week. I got a Marshall JCM. British one, it's about 25 years old, and I was gonna be exciting. I got a 73 Bassman. I wanted to make a video about that. I got the 1959, the Plexi Marshall pedal. Wanted to make a video about that, but no, Fender had to come and take this shit and shove it down my throat, so I got to shove it down yours. I'm really sorry about that. Let's move on to the next article. I'm not going to be as nuanced with this one as I was with the previous one. Fender outlines the future of Squier after the launch of its new Standard Series, which is built in the same factory. So this headline is a little bit more damning than the other one, right off the bat. But there was a part of this article that really, really bothered me. And it's this right here. So they asked him the same question as the other one did about, is Squier going away? And he says, it's the same guy, Justin Norval, EVP of product. There's so much equity in the Squier brand name. There are people that love Squier. There are people that proudly play Squier over Fender. Again, 100% bullshit. Unless it's not a choice, if they have to. Sure, I get it. If I didn't have a choice and I only had a Squier, then man, I'd be all in on Squier. And I would love Squier, it'd be my favorite brand, and I would scream from the rooftops how much I love it. That's okay. Be proud of what you have. But don't you tell me that someone with an equal opportunity to play both would honestly choose Squier as a whole over Fender. There's nobody like that exists who has an opinion that's credible and worth listening to. Squier on its own is one of the biggest electric guitar brands, so it would be crazy to get rid of that. It makes sense the retiring of the Squier brand name would be a mistake. Even if Fender does seek new ways to push down its price points, there's no way they could match Squier. In its own catalog, for example, Squier has its $199 sonic range. Plus, as Norval states, some players are proud and loyal Squier advocates and prefer playing those instruments over what are perceived to be better Fenders. Not only that, but according to Norval, there's an inherent difference between Squier Classic Vibe and Fender Standard Series, regardless of the fact they are made in the same workshop. Then he goes on again about the same bullshit about how, well, the Classic Vibe is vintage and this one needs to be modern. And here it is again, the guardrails that keep something Squier were off. I mean, did they do like one written interview and like mail it to multiple people? Because these are almost word for word the exact same answers. The last sentence. The way things are these days, it's not about what factory it's made in. It's really like Squier goes to $500 in the US and Fender should start there and go up. And so we kind of just got out of our own way, I guess. No. You got greedy as shit. And you realized you couldn't actually charge more than $500 for a Squier because no one in their right mind would pay that. Epiphone's getting away with it somehow, but they're making pretty damn good guitars, I have to say. And they didn't want to make a Fender $500 because they thought it would devalue the brand. I'm talking about Mexico Fender. So they went and they made Asia Fender. They failed themselves in every way on this. I don't even really know where to go from here on this. I really don't. I mean, this is a humongous insult. This is a humongous insult. It just goes to show you that they are out of touch with us, with me and you. They're out of touch with what Fender means. And clearly they know it means something, or they would get rid of Squier. If Fender really meant nothing, if the name really meant nothing to them, and they thought that there was really no minimum standard for that, they would just get rid of Squier, and they'd have a Fender Bullet at $199. But no, they got to keep Squier around so they can make the lower tiered instruments, and that's fine. That's great. But what the hell are you doing? You took this $599, and by your own admission, okay, that last sentence at the end to me proves that this is, in fact, a Squier. It's all about price. Squier goes to $500 in the US, and Fender should start there and go up. This is a looks like a duck situation to me, guys. Because you've got a Squier factory. You have a directive from Fender that says make the best Strat you can with no price limit, and you end up at $599. And you can't call that a Squier because no one's going to buy it if it's called a Squier. Even though it is a Squier. It is a Squier. He says right here, Squier goes to $500 in the US. This is a decision that they have made. The only reason it isn't called a Squier is because they wanted to charge you $599 for it. It is not a Fender. It is a Squier. This is an enormous insult to Leo Fender and everybody who's ever loved the Fender brand name. And I'm not a hater of Fender. I love Fender. I just told you a few minutes ago. I got a 73 Fender Bassman amp. I love that amp. I own 7 or 8 or 9 Fenders. I own multiple American Fenders. I've spent lots of money on Fender. My first real guitar was a Fender Strat. I love Fender. I love, 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 love Fender. And the fact that they're doing this is driving me absolutely insane. And I'm so sorry we had to make this video again. People are going to jump down my throat again, just like they did the last few times I talked about this. The facts are the facts. I bought one. It felt like shit. It sounded like shit. It sounded like an Affinity Strat, and a Mexican Strat blows it away. Go watch my video where I compare them. If you think that those sound the same, if you think the Standard sounds the same as the Mexican, your ears are broken, you have no credibility, and none of the things you think about guitars are valid. I'm just going to say it. Because I'm going to be unapologetic about this, okay? Everybody else is softballing this topic. Like, oh, it could be better. Oh, the pickups are, yeah, they're okay. They're baseline. Oh, the neck, it could use a little work. Oh, the frets are a little, they're okay. The switch feels a little, The logo looks a little bit, Why do we live in a society where we have to be so careful? Oh, no. We might hurt Fender's feelings. Oh, no. One of my viewers might actually like this guitar and I might hurt them. No. I'm not playing that way. I'm not doing it. I've made the conscious decision to be honest. Not doing it. If you're going to come here and tell me that you think this is a good guitar, you're just wrong. That's it. I hate to break it to you, folks, but the world is black and white. Period. The world is not shades of gray. It is black and white. Black and white. It is right and it is wrong. It is good and it is bad. It is wonderful and it is shit. And these Fender Standard guitars are 100% shit.